Welcome on into the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and it's time for the Week 11 Waiver Wire Report. And just a heads up, I will go through, my top 3 to even 5 at each position: quarterback, wide receiver, running back, tight ends, some DST streaming options, even looking into the future a little bit with one of those options that looks real nice for the short term at least. And you can also join me live here a Tuesday evening, sometime around 8 p.m., most likely Eastern Standard Time. I will be live here to help answer any of your questions, because everybody's waiver wire looks different. Everybody's team looks different. There might be some options that you want to talk through that I'll be available to help you out with. And so I have been doing that, so this video is a little bit quicker, more concise, but you can find all of this information up on the website if you want to review this information. Also, Monday Night Football has not happened yet, so obviously that could change some things. Hopefully not. You look at the Week 10 injuries list, and currently it's looking pretty nice. I'm sure we'll get some of these injuries that we're monitoring. Maybe they'll be worse than we're hoping for, expecting. But yeah, there were several players who got injured in game this weekend and then returned to the game. But sometimes, even when players return to the game, they don't necessarily then play the next week because adrenaline, swelling, all those types of things happen. So with that being said, currently things are looking better with the waiver wire chart, with the injuries, I should say. A lot of people have been getting healthier. Fewer people have gotten injured as of recently. Hopefully that trend continues here on Monday night. Hopefully I haven't cursed anything. And so with that, you can see the follow-up list. It has shrunk here, and if any of these guys are on your list, there you go. Chris Olave, the team is not giving up on him possibly returning after a 4-week stint, so maybe we'll get him back for pretty much for the fantasy playoffs. We'll see on that. Other than that, I would say Juju Smith-Schuster, maybe it's on the poor end of day-to-day based on recent news, and this Isaiah Pacheco timeline still seems to work. Apparently, Juju Smith-Schuster closer to returning than Isaiah Pacheco. So I think we get one more week of Kareem Hunt before we're really not going to be sure if we're going to have him anymore or not. DK Metcalf should be returning after a bye week here, and Nico Collins, I assume, is highly likely to play. That is an assumption. That's not based on any report, so heads up on that. And then new injuries, we got Tank Bigsby with an ankle injury, assuming that it is a sprain, which I haven't seen yet information on that. 2 or more weeks for recovery there. And then Aaron Jones, Chuba Hubbard, Sam Laporta, Dalton Kincaid, all these players who went down in game. Same with Najee Harris, and then came back. Could be an opportunity for their backups to do something if they miss time due to those injuries that didn't quite keep them out of the games. So, like I said, we'll be monitoring those. And that's going to bring us on to the quarterback options for Week 11. And Russell Wilson comes out of nowhere at the top of the list here. Definitely not by and large, I mean, because of his production so far, including the fact that he's going to be going up against Baltimore, a team that what Russell does has been one of the bigger weaknesses for this Baltimore defenses. So it is one of those nice matchups that really works together for, what the player does against an opponent that has frankly been, very good for opposing quarterbacks so far this season for the most part. And it doesn't get a whole lot worse. Cleveland, Cincinnati after that. Cleveland has not been the same defense as last year, and Cincinnati, although it's gotten better, is still not some sort of great shutdown, defense, especially against receivers or anything like that. Justin Herbert gets Cincinnati this week, and then they get Baltimore. The Chargers get Baltimore the week after that. So that's nice. I like that setup here for Justin Herbert in the short term. He's returning from this list last week, and I still have faith in that. This was a tough week. That's why I did not want to play him this last week. And then that's going to bring us on to Tua Tagovailoa. And we'll see what happens tonight. That could always change some things here, but going up against Las Vegas does give, a fair bit of promise there for this Miami offense. Let's go on to the running backs, and there's one clear-cut answer here, Audric Estime. I'm sorry I didn't get on top of this one a little bit more, but I didn't think it was happening. It's not that I didn't think about it, didn't see the potential of it coming, but I did not think it was happening. I guess I didn't see it coming this quickly. So Audric Estime, if you're not aware, took the starting role in Denver, it appears, this last weekend. He had 14 carries. I think Jaleel McLaughlin had like 2 carries. And Javonte Williams, who I thought they were happy enough with, had 1 carry and then 2 receptions on top of that. So it seems pretty clear. Audric Estime now the starting running back for the Denver Broncos, which has been a surprisingly decent team. So not the worst role to have to be able to find on the waiver wire at this point in the season. I do want to touch base on Minnesota's backfield, Ty Chandler versus Cam Akers, just in case Aaron Jones does end up missing some time. I'm quite sure this is one of those cases where the running back 3, Ty Chandler, is the natural backup to Aaron Jones. He does a lot of the Aaron Jones things. Cam Akers will keep his role that we've seen him in these last 2 weeks as kind of the banger between the tackles. I think he expands that role a little bit, basically becomes your first and second down dude, and then Ty Chandler is like your third down guy, and maybe takes every third drive or something like that as like the starter on that drive, or the 4-minute, 2-minute drill type of situations. That would probably be Ty Chandler. That's my assumption for those two, so I don't think it's like a slam dunk. Cam Akers is the one to own full PPR and stuff. Maybe Ty Chandler is the one to own there. And I do think that there's some sort of split that goes on. Then Khalil Herbert, it's hard to imagine that he'll become the primary back there in Cincinnati, but there is that opportunity for that to still happen. They went out and they traded for Khalil Herbert for a reason. I think we all have a certain amount of respect about Khalil Herbert, think that he's a pretty good back, especially, compared to how much usage he's gotten this year for Chicago. And so there is that threat there to Chase Brown's workload there in Cincinnati. With how good of a job Chase Brown has done these last couple of weeks, you have to think that Chase Brown's going to maintain, some sort of primary role over Khalil Herbert. But we'll see, and I think it is worth taking a shot of getting Khalil Herbert on your roster. Other than that, all those backup running backs that are available are never terrible to hold on to in case of an injury. And then wide receivers, we've got Ricky Pearsall at the top of the list. I have concerns, but he's just played well enough. To me, I think this is kind of like the Jaden Reed of this offense, so maybe a little bit touchdown dependent would be my best guess for Ricky Pearsall going forward. But also, maybe he expands his role. I don't know. I just think that Juwan Jennings, all the other targets there, is going to make it pretty hard to predict Ricky Pearsall. But he's done so well. He could carve out a bigger role. He could, be the guy instead of Juwan Jennings in that offense. By the way, if Juwan Jennings is available, I highly suggest him myself. Quentin Johnston going up against Cincinnati, Baltimore in these coming weeks, and we've seen him do well. I think that we can expect that to continue, especially in these matchups. Juju Smith-Schuster, guy who may not be returning this week yet again, so, if you're in an emergency situation with your wide receivers, maybe he's not the guy to grab, that you might not be able to use him this week. But I still think that he has a very nice role, high floor type of role in one of the better, with one of the better quarterbacks throwing to him in an offense that I think getting its weapons back and piecing these things together that they've picked up, Juju and Hopkins. I think that that's going to come together, and they're going to be a pretty good offense rest of season, I think. Xavier Legette, his role increased. He's done okay with it. I'm not starving to get him onto my roster, but he's definitely a good option. And Mike Williams, probably a little boom or bust like he always has been. But like I said last week with this trade, it just fits. It makes a lot of sense for what Russell Wilson does in this offense. And Mike Williams, as we saw, will get his at sometimes. And I think they have a nice matchup actually coming up. I should have highlighted that. And if you recall, that matchup is Baltimore for Pittsburgh. So that's, another week where you could take a chance on that occurring again in terms of him getting a big touchdown. Tight ends, Jatavian Sanders, Jonnu Smith have both seemingly carved out a bit of a role on their offenses. We'll see what happens with Jonnu Smith in tonight's game. That would determine some things about how much I like him on this list or not. And then Dawson Knox, if Dalton Kincaid is indeed going to miss some time. Now, there's a little bit I've seen reports. I got a notification that Dalton Kincaid returned to the game about an hour 45 minutes after in the second half. He returned to the game. I've read an article that said that he returned to the game, but I've also seen 2 articles about waiver wire specifically that say he got knocked out of the game. I think he returned to the game and he just didn't get any more targets or anything. Maybe his usage was limited from that point on forward too, quite probably. But I'm not 100% sure on that, and regardless, it's something that we're monitoring. And Dawson Knox also, they do have a good tight end matchup against Kansas City, been one of the best tight end matchups so far this season. So if he's going to be the lead tight end in that offense this next week, he'll be a nice, flyer waiver option. You can always get ahead of that if you're possibly if you want to on the waiver wire. And then for the DSTs, we've got the Houston Texans. They have Dallas, Tennessee, and Jacksonville coming up. If that hasn't gone from something where it looked okay to something that looks real sweet right now, yeah, that looks real sweet. I've been keeping an eye on them, and I'm upset I didn't quite pick them up in a league where I probably should have. And then Green Bay Packers going up against Chicago this week, so that is fantastic. And the Miami Dolphins going up against Las Vegas, not too bad there. So those are my 3 biggest streaming options that should be available in your leagues, most likely. Thank you very much for tuning on in. Once again, I will be live this evening at about 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time or so. And then, of course, I always go live Thursdays, Saturdays, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Thursdays prior to the games, Saturday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and Sunday mornings, 2.5 hours, actually, I've been doing prior to kickoff. Thank you very much. Peace out.